Good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this work with you today. My name is Lorraine, and I'm the Head of Nursing for Research and Innovation at Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me to give some background and context to the project. So I'm a paediatric trained nurse with a variety of general peds and specialty peds experience. I became interested in research whilst working in paediatric intensive care, and in 2007, I moved to work in a research nurse role. In 2012, I was appointed as the Head of Nursing for Research and Innovation, and over the last 9 years, I've held a number of different national and international research leadership positions, all with the key focus of developing and promoting the role of the clinical research nurse and its importance in practice. In 2015, I was fortunate enough to be invited to participate in an International Nursing Science Fellowship Programme at Boston Children's Hospital with Dr. Meg McCabe. I'm currently a Florence Nightingale Leadership Scholar. As I mentioned, I've been a head of nursing for a number of years, and I'm passionate about promoting the role of the clinical research nurse and improving the research participant experience. At GOSH, we employ approximately 50 clinical research nurses who work across the organisation. We also have a dedicated 8-cubicle research space, the NHR Clinical Research Facility, where the key focus is on the delivery of early phase clinical trials, although the team work on most phases across the hospital. In 2012, I met Shauna Browning, one of IACRN's past presidents, at a conference in the UK. It was here I was invited to speak at the IACRN conference in San Diego some years back in 2013. This is where my life as a research nurse changed and a number of different opportunities opened up. I met Tara, Becca, and Michelle, who were from Cincinnati Children's Hospital, who subsequently invited me to speak at their hospital in 2014. I also met Dr. Meg McCabe, who invited me to join a 2-year nursing science fellowship program at Boston Children's Hospital to work with her as my mentor on a project of my choosing. This was such an amazing opportunity. For the next 2 years, I flew to Boston every 3 months for a week to attend the program lectures and work with Meg on my project idea. I wanted to undertake a project that I was passionate about and that was going to be beneficial to clinical research nursing. So Meg and I agreed I would focus on something around clinical research and the participant experience. I really wanted to be able to understand the impact of the clinical research nurse and articulate what it was they do, as there are so many varied descriptions and misconceptions out there. The definition of impact can be the influence or difference brought about by providing a service or by having a specific healthcare professional in post. So in 2015, we conducted a literature review, which highlighted several common themes for clinical research nurses working across the globe. The themes were about how they felt about their role and the ambiguity surrounding this and the role expectations. It highlighted the experience they had and the role they played in education, as well as the education required to undertake the clinical research nurse role. It also highlighted the importance of communication and collaboration, as well as setting out some key aspects of what they bring to the role. It's evident from the literature that understanding and defining the role of the clinical research nurse is an important subject. However, there is limited evidence in addressing the impact of the clinical research nurse role and the impact it brings to the participant experience. Following the literature review, a research focus group study protocol was developed. The protocol aim was to explore the clinical research nurse's perceptions of the impact of the role of the clinical research nurse on the young people's experience of participating on a research trial. We identified 3 sites: Boston Children's Hospital, Cincinnati Children's Hospital, both in the US, and then Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital in London. So we worked, as I said, we worked across 3 sites, so the 2 in the US and 1 in the UK. There were a number of challenges with this in the sense of the fact that you had one core protocol, but then actually you needed to have 2 different protocols because there were subtle differences between US and UK language and interpretations. And as well as that, I had to submit 3 separate ethics applications, as well as attend 2 hospital boards to get approval to conduct the study. We picked focus groups because we felt it was the best methodology, so a chance to talk and capture more feedback. The literature review demonstrated that there was little out there on this subject, so it deemed to be the best fit. So we conducted 7 focus groups across 3 sites. The total number of participants were 33. The data was collected between 2016 and 2019. So the US data was collected in the summer of 2016, and I was really fortunate enough to be able to go over and participate in collecting all of that data. And then there was a gap for the UK data that was collected in the summer of 2019. The delays were mainly due to a few logistical challenges. So in the middle of all of this, I took time off to have a baby and had a year's maternity leave. I had to reapply for my UK ethics because it had expired by the time I came back from my leave. I needed to identify someone in the UK to complete the focus groups on my behalf, as it wouldn't have been appropriate because I was the overall manager for the team of nurses at Great Ormond Street. You can see a snapshot of the questions here that we used to form the focus group guide, and thematic analysis was used to derive the key themes, which I'll talk about later, utilising the framework set out by King and Horrocks. Okay, so descriptive observations and demographic data. The age was really varied. It was well spread across both US sites, and the UK nurses were in a slightly younger age group, which is typical of the Great Ormond Street staffing profile. Again, the years as a research nurse reflects the age of the respondents, and I think it's important to note that the London unit had only been established for 10 years, and that was why we were seeking our research nurses. So many of them couldn't have been imposed longer than 10 years. And then the educational attainments were pretty standard across all of the sites, and the phases of studies that they all worked on was a mixed representation across all sites. So what did I discover about my clinical research nurse colleagues? Well, the majority of them fell into research nursing, citing hours, flexible shifts. Many of them had felt burnt out on the floor, on the wards, and some of them really felt they needed a change. And interestingly, for some of them, it was the first time they could see nursing as a long-term career. So the role and enjoyment. They talked a lot about how they described their roles. I think it's important, as if we can't describe and articulate what it is to be a research nurse, then how can we expect others, now senior nurse leaders, to understand what we do? And to go one step further, how can we ensure that we are recruiting the right people? The nurses talked a lot about what they enjoyed. So they really enjoyed the autonomy and being in control of their workload and utilising their skills. They loved the relationships that they developed with the families. And this was a key highlight throughout all of the text, which leads us on to the next slide in areas where they felt they had the most impact. So they highlighted the nurses demonstrated really that there were 4 key areas of impact, and each area of impact had subsequent themes, some of which are cross-cutting. So these were around staff, organisation, external impact, and impact with the participants and the families. So the next few slides are going to be a snapshot of where the clinical research nurses feel they have the most impact. So if we talk about staff impact first, they talk about where they had impact with their colleagues both directly and indirectly. The research nurses saw themselves as pivotal to the delivery of the research protocol. They shared their views on the impact with their colleagues, how they were key to making things happen smoothly. They saw themselves as facilitators and communicators. They also highlight the importance of the relationships they build in order to achieve aspects of the research protocol. So like having to prove themselves. One nurse talks about how the nurses no longer eye roll when they walk onto the ward, and they are now willing to help each other out. They talk a lot about coordination and how it really is amazing teamwork. So for organisational impact, really they highlight the differences between the clinical research nurse and coordinators. It's an interesting point because across all 3 sites, they talk about the value of the nurse registration and what this means to the organisation. At the time, this was particularly relevant in the US due to a number of budget cuts, and also within the UK due to research nurse shortages and the national nursing shortage. They feel they're key in improving the research organisational culture, and they talk about how the clinical research nurse brings together key nursing skills and transferable skills, and and again, the importance of their professional registration. Externally, they felt they had the most impact when they focus on the importance of delivering the professional relationships with sponsors and CRAs. They talk about how they can input into the protocol research design and how they're also important in the study's success about maintaining and supporting recruitment, and how this, having the research nurse involved improves the uptake and retention in studies. Participants and families impact. I think for me, this is where the impact really shone out from all 3 transcripts from the focus groups. It was a real privilege to be part of and read the transcriptions of the focus groups. The sense of compassion and pride that the nurses had in their work, and the overwhelming sense of how they were working flat out to deliver the safe care to their participants was really humbling. They clearly demonstrate the clinical research nurse value and the impact they have on the participant journey, from advocating for a young person to leave a trial as they can't emotionally cope with anymore, to being the family's key link for the duration of the care. They give really clear examples of how research enables you to provide personalised care that all nurses should be able to provide, but you can't always due to the constraints of the clinical wards. And they really highlight the role they play in participant safety and the responsibility this entails. Now, it's quite a long quote, but there is a quote, it's the second from the bottom, where they talk about how overwhelming they are with the safety aspects and patient safety. And that they feel like, that sometimes the research nurse is the first person or the key person to see that data first of all. And then they have to liaise with the PIs and the rest of the team to ensure their patients are safe and the responsibility that entails. So I think that's a really important thing to think about. Okay, so in summary, this work provides a new insight and understanding of the impact of the clinical research nurse role. There was a huge amount of data, and I'm still undergoing further analysis of this. There are many similarities between the US and UK data, although there are some interesting differences which I will continue to explore. I think the findings can be used to inform and improve participant experience, as well as provide core knowledge for senior healthcare leaders when understanding the contribution of the clinical research nurse to the nursing profession. A few things I think are important to know regarding limitations. By chance, all were female. All participants in the focus group were female. Nursing is a largely female-dominated profession. However, different perspectives may have been held by a more mixed cohort. So I've already mentioned some of the site limitations. So around Great Ormond Street, we've only been established for just over 10 years now, and we're in a central London location. This means our workforce is typically younger, they can sometimes be more junior, and they're more mobile. And we have an increased staff turnover. So we have less years of experience as a research nurse and less organisational memory. If I was to do this again, it would be good to look across the UK at more established units to understand if the views are slightly different. And then I think I've already touched on this, but time in between data collection. It's important to note that this project, this study that I've done wasn't attached to an accredited pathway, so it was part of the Nursing Science Fellowship Programme, but it wasn't part of a PhD programme or anything else like that. So a lot of this work has been done in my own time, and as I said before, I took time off to start a family and things like that, and having to reapply for ethics. So there was a delay in the data, which obviously isn't ideal. And just to kind of add as well, so all data was collected in the presence of doctoral prepared nurses. So I collected the data for Cincinnati and observed the data collection in Boston. And for London, 2 colleagues in the ORCID research unit, Paula and Kate, collected the data, as it wouldn't have been appropriate for me as I managed the research nurses in London. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone that's been involved in the project, and particularly to Meg, Tara, Becca and Michelle from Cincinnati Children's Hospital, IACRN, Kate and Paula from Great Ormond Street, Gosh Charity for funding my fellowship, and all the nurses who participated in the focus group. So thank you very much.